Welcome to the webinar this afternoon. I'm Brian Abernathy, General Manager at Convergent Nonprofit Solutions, and I'm excited to have Megan Kladakis here with us this afternoon from Harness. Megan is a seasoned nonprofit and customer engagement expert, and she's going to share with us this afternoon about annual giving and recurring giving. And Harness has been such a phenomenal partner for Convergent for several years now. And I want to frame why this is so important in the light of the work that Convergent does. Our primary service and support to nonprofits is around capital and comprehensive campaigns, very significant major funding initiatives. And the foundation from which significant million or multi-million dollar or decamillion dollar funding initiatives are built, where their success is rooted, is in cultivating a healthy and consistent annual and recurring giving stream of stability for your nonprofit. You don't jump from zero to millions of dollars overnight, with the exception of maybe some incredibly wealthy benefactor that wants to see that happen. But by and large, nonprofits who achieve major significant levels of funding and capital and comprehensive campaigns started out with very intentional, very structured, grassroots focused annual and recurring giving efforts. And Harness is who Convergent refers nonprofits to when they're in that place. They need to start at that grassroots or grow from that grassroots level to be ready for major gifts funding, capital campaign, comprehensive campaign, endowment funding, whatever those next significant steps may be. So Megan, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm so excited to hear all that you've got to share with us. And I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you enlighten us this afternoon on annual funds and recurring giving.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. And we were just talking about this, but love being a partner and seeing so much value. And I know that you mentioned one of our partners we're going to spotlight today is someone that you referred to us that's doing really well. So thank you again. Thank you everybody for joining. I know many of you, it's your lunch hour. So thank you for taking the time to learn more about annual giving and recurring giving. And regardless of where you're at in your journey at your nonprofit, if you're just beginning to fundraise or if you've been doing this for a while, my hope is that you'll have some great takeaways today. And please feel free to write down your questions throughout the time, and we'll have a dedicated time at the end to do some Q&A. But if you guys can see my screen, we are going to dive right on in. So we'll spend just a little bit of time doing some intros, lay the foundation. We'll focus on annual campaigns first and then recurring giving and wrap up with some takeaways and questions. But just quick introductions. Thank you, Brian. I've been a part of the Harness team for 6 years now. I actually was a Harness user back when I was working at my nonprofit food bank in Tampa, Feeding Tampa Bay. They're part of Feeding America's food bank network. I was responsible for about 25,000 volunteers each year and about 200 corporate partners. We were trying to convert them to donors, those volunteers to donors. And so the Harness Roundup Spare Change Giving Program was a great intro way for us to do that without risking to lose our volunteer base, who was at the time saving us over $1 million in labor costs. So throughout my experience at the food bank, and then really the past 12 years now fundraising, I've had the privilege of working with pretty much every nonprofit from 5K to 3 billion. International, domestic. My specialties are nonprofit strategy and corporate partners and recurring giving. But as I'm sure many of you know, if you've been in nonprofit for any length of time, it doesn't really matter what your title is. You just do all the things. Am I right? So I am curious to get us started when it comes to laying the foundation. Before we get into the weeds of annual campaigns and recurring giving specifically, I know that when we're all fundraising for our organizations, we all want this, right? Like, show me the money. Money is the muscle of mission. I need more money yesterday to be able to hire new staff and expand my programming and make an impact for my people. And I know that it's going to take some work. It's going to take some effort on my part. But if we're really being really honest, the reality is what it feels like to fundraise, especially for our annual campaigning and recurring giving, can feel like this, right? We're just hustling, trying to get it in. Sometimes it feels like we're begging, the same people over and over to care about our causes as much as we do. And the reality is, with as many hats that we wear on the day-to-day, fundraising sometimes falls to the back burner because it's a full-time job on top of our full-time job. Give me an amen if in the chat if you can relate to this. And maybe some of you, especially if you've been in the journey fundraising for your nonprofit for a while, have either said these things or you've heard these things, perhaps from your board or executive director, right? Like, hey, if I'm raising money for overhead costs and unrestricted money, I'm just taking money away from programs and I can't afford to do that. The reality is people only give during the holidays, so I'm not going to waste time fundraising year round. I'm just going to really push for Giving Tuesday through end of year when people are trying to make that last minute tax deductible gift. Hey, if we could just explain our budget gaps, especially where the grants fall off and where we pick up the pieces and serve, they'll care and they'll want to give to us, right? And donors just, they're completely unwilling to cover overhead no matter what we do. We've tried 1,000 times. But those that do give, care about our organization more than anything. And, the reality is if they've given once, they'll probably give again. They don't really require a lot of hand holding or interaction, just maybe an occasional piece of direct mail. Our donors, we talk to them pretty often. They understand what general fund means. They know what that money's going to. They know how it's making a difference for our cause. We really don't need to belabor that too much. And as long as we give, a heartfelt appeal, we don't really need to have a clear call to action. We can just say like anything helps or you make a difference. That should be good enough. And, if I ask for a monthly gift, I feel like I can't ask for one-time gifts. So I'm curious which of these myths, and they are all myths, have you either possibly said, if you'd be willing to admit it and be so bold, or heard in your organization? Feel free to put it in the chat. Or if there's a new one, maybe that's not on here. These are just some of the most common ones we've heard in working with thousands of nonprofits that oftentimes affect the way that we approach fundraising, especially for annual campaigns. So we want to try to debunk some of those myths today. And before we dive into, really, let me move the chat over here so you guys can see. Before we dive into the annual campaigning specifically, and the recurring giving specifically, it's really important, especially for those of you all who are new to the world of fundraising for annual campaigns and recurring gifts, to understand the foundation, right? And from the highest level, 10,000-foot view in the clouds, basics of what you need. These are the core fundraising fundamentals. So I will invite slash challenge you to do a quick self-evaluation of where you guys are at your organization when it comes to these categories. So when we've helped thousands of nonprofits go to market with a successful fundraising campaign, recurring giving campaign, these are the core pieces that you need. So if you had to rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 is like, I don't even know what to do, where we're starting. I don't know where to start. Versus 5 is, there's always room for improvement and growth, but we have a really solid handle in this area. How would you guys rate yourself in your nonprofit fundraising strategy? A way that you could test that is to say, hey, I feel like I have a really clear understanding of what I need money for, when I need it by, and how I'm going to get it. So who, the when, how, right? I want 10% from grants. I want 20% from corporate partners. I'm going to run 3 digital campaigns online this year, one for Giving Tuesday. I'll do an in-person event that should get me about 10% of revenue. Just quick pulse check on a scale of 0 to 5. You guys can, if you're feeling brave and bold, you can put it in the chat for us. But this is more so for you, self-reflection. Where do you feel like you're at? Then as we switch to the marketing side, okay, I know what I need money for, but do I have a clear understanding of how to create compelling messaging and how to create marketing designs that can kind of cut through the noise, especially in digital channels, and really appeal to a variety of stakeholders, whether that's my mission shared with a corporation versus a Facebook follower versus a mom of one of my club kids? Do I know how to write that messaging, make that ask, share those designs? So on a scale of 0 to 5. Again, 0, I don't know. 5s, I'm doing great. From a reach perspective, it's saying, hey, I know what I need money for. I know how to tell the story well and ask people for money, but do I actually have people to share that call to action with? Do I have a network that has diverse channels of communication? So social media, email, face-to-face, print. Some of our nonprofits have radio connections. Awesome. Do I have the ability to reach a broad, diverse range of stakeholders that could contribute to my annual campaign or recurring campaign, even if it's only $1, or maybe it could be up to $1 million? That would be great. Where are you guys at in your reach, 0 to 5? And then the last piece is execution, right? So you have all these other pieces, but do I actually have someone on my team that is either exclusively dedicated to or can prioritize actually sharing all that marketing, sharing the great content and collateral with those stakeholders, go out and meet that corporate partner face to face, host a lunch and learn in my at my corporate office type of thing. So 0 to 5, evaluate yourself. This is a great baseline and a starter topic kind of conversation that you can go back to your development teams after this meeting and say, hey, you know what? I think there's some areas of deficits or some areas of strength that we can probably focus on before we go to launch. So that's the foundation fundamental. I want to dive into annual campaigning to get started because recurring giving really does funnel mostly into your annual campaign. So a lot of the groundwork that we're going to lay here with annual campaigning will overlap with recurring. But for those of us that are new, recognizing that there's a broad range of folks on here, some who are just getting started to some who are very seasoned, I want to at least kind of lay the foundation of what is an annual campaign, how are we defining it? So it's really your fundraising effort that you do year round to try to raise money for your annual operating budget. And most often, these unrestricted funds are going to wherever you need it the most. That could be, and it usually is most often for the quote unsexy expenses like staff salaries, insurance, paying the light bill, building repairs, program expenses, or additional expenses that might not be covered by other areas, tech fees, utilities, admin costs. So this is the stuff that's usually more challenging to fundraise for, but it's part of what makes your business run. You have to have these funds coming in. And the beautiful part is when you raise money for annual campaigning, and you're raising money for the where it's needed most, how you're probably advertising it to your donor base, it actually gives your organization the flexibility and the stability for you to grow, to adapt to changes, right? How many of us were affected by COVID whenever we were really reliant upon those face-to-face events, and then COVID kind of stopped that for a while, and we had to pivot very quickly and come up with some other funds. And it really is important to note, and we'll talk about this, that as you're sharing your annual campaign with potential donors, kind of framing it as, hey, this is mission fueling work, right? If you ask someone, can you please pay our light bill or can you please pay for a staff salary bump? No one's going to want to give to that. But if you frame it in the right way, it can definitely attract the right person. And oftentimes, annual campaigning, as Brian mentioned, is really the goal is to build long-term supporters. Not everybody has to be $1 million giver. In fact, it's better if you develop a strong, stable base of a broad variety of givers. That could be $1 to, right, 10,000 or more dollars. But the goal is that there's a broad variety of folks that are going to want to support your core mission. They just need different messaging, which we'll talk about in a minute, and you're going to reach those folks through different channels. Obviously, the annual campaign is promoted throughout the year, but there are targeted seasonal times where you'll want to proactively push your annual campaign as the priority. So with that foundation being laid, with the core that I mentioned to you in the beginning of fundraising fundamentals, strategy, marketing, reach, and execution, we're going to dive into some high level notables for each of those categories. So the first one is strategy. We have the privilege of talking to literally thousands of nonprofits all the time. And in one of the first questions I have for them is, what's your fundraising approach? Do you have a plan? And I don't know if you guys could probably even guess this. I should have probably made this a question, but easily more than 90% of our nonprofits do not have a fundraising strategy, a plan of attack for how they're going to raise whatever the annual budget is, $1 million, for their cause. Many of you might be familiar with the classic spray and pray approach, which I know, especially for our smaller and medium-sized nonprofits, this is the way. We don't really know what works. We're just kind of coming up with an idea here or there. Maybe the board member presented one, or maybe a volunteer offered to host a party, and we're like, sure, that's the way I'm getting money. But it's very important to take a thoughtful, strategic approach and really start with understanding internally, knowing your numbers, right? So how much does it actually cost to operate our mission? Like real talk, nuts and bolts, put all of it together, staff salaries, insurance. What does it cost us to run our mission as is? And then how much do we want to raise this year, right? Oh, hopefully your goal is increasing year over year because your programs and your mission impact is increasing year over year. But does your goal actually even account for growth? Many times nonprofits will come to us and say, hey, I raised 250,000 last year. I'm looking for 250 this year. And I'll ask them, well, but do you want your programs to go? Do you want to help more cats and dogs? Do you want to get more kids recruited to your club? Well, of course. Well, how much would that cost you to do that? Because you actually have to shoot for a goal that accounts for growth and margin, not just making bare minimum expenses each year. So know your numbers, have a growth mindset, know your SWOT. So this is an exercise we do initially with every one of our nonprofits at Harness is we'll run an analysis of their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats so we can identify have you tried to fundraise in from an annual campaign perspective before? How has that worked for you? What's worked well? What's not worked well? What's been the resistance barriers? What's been your strengths? What do people really rally around? And let's lean into those and be aware of our weaknesses so we can make up for those. And then keep perspective, especially many of you have quite significant, robust annual campaign budgets, and that can feel daunting to start over from scratch year over year, trying to say, like, how the heck are we going to raise $1 million this year? Right? I have the same staff as last year, or maybe I have one part-time staff member. I lost a staff member due to grant funding. My board's putting extra pressure to put less and less towards marketing and more towards programs. How am I going to do this? And the best thing I can encourage you with is just keep perspective that annual campaigning, you have the full year. Fundraising is a long game. At Harness, we definitely encourage you to proactively push your annual campaign multiple times throughout the year, but understand that this is not a sprint, it is a marathon for sure. We'll talk about this next a little bit more in the messaging slide, but from a marketing perspective, it's really important when you're fundraising for your annual campaign to think about a high level in the clouds overview of what you do, but with anchor points. And I'm going to show you in our partner example, an anchor point example of an impact. So there might be a lot of programs and services that you offer that each have different impacts, but if you craft that message or share that message too broadly, nonprofits are going to, or sorry, nonprofits, donors are really going to struggle with identifying how could my $25 here or $10 there really make a difference. So we'll talk about that. And really, when you're sharing an annual campaign message, that high level overview with donors, it's less about all the programs and services that you offer, which I'm sure are amazing, and I'm sure there's many of them. But the value that donors are finding and why they support annual campaigns is really in the outcomes, right? So, for example, when I was working at our food bank, we would talk about, well, we have 3 mobile pantry food distributions, and we work with 70 agency partners, and we have 3 pop-up shop food distribution centers that distributes 1,000 pounds of food every week. And people are like, that sounds great. But then we said, hey, we believe that no one should go hungry. And so what we're doing is making sure that there's a warm meal on the table for every family and that a mom who's working 2 jobs trying to pay for her kids' meals doesn't have to choose between a light bill and a food bill. So your support helps us make sure the mom doesn't have to make that choice. So do you see the difference in kind of the outcomes or the program focus versus the outcome focus? So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then be bold and brave. This is a little bit unconventional, but in light of the current political market, this has been coming up quite a bit for some of our nonprofits who work in spaces that might have some controversial political statements or perspectives that you might feel might limit your ability to get donors in certain markets. But for example, at my food bank, there was this, we did a poll in the community, and there was this persona and this perspective that, well, hungry people are just homeless people, or hungry people are just lazy people. And so we actually launched a marketing campaign called Don't Label Hunger that attacked that head on. And we showed pictures of our clients who were willing to, right, gave us consent to share their pictures and the broad variety of in that campaign of the people who faced food insecurity and hunger. It was not the traditional branded, this is what it looks like. So I would say be bold. Don't be afraid to address what you think is the elephant in the room head on. Be aware that you might have to navigate that, whoever your social media specialist might have to navigate that gracefully in the comment section of whatever you post. But it is important to kind of address those issues head on, because if you're thinking it and the donor's thinking it, and that's their resistance to fundraising, then it's helpful for you to get out ahead of it. So that is the foundation for the strategy. I'm going to show you a little bit more in a minute. But when it comes to marketing, we just talked about this a minute ago, but messaging is everything. When we're talking about raising funds for, like I said, the unsexy things like staff salaries and light bills, we have to focus on capacity building, not necessarily on the operational or budget gaps that you're having. Because again, going back to the original myth, it's true that people don't care about your budget gaps, but they do care about your mission making more of an impact and growing. And I literally heard this week from a new partner, well, Meg, I just really need to raise money because I need $60,000 to hire a staff member, but no one wants to pay me that for a staff member. But literally, our people are, it's the mental health is their industry. Our people are the services, right? It's what we offer. We can't do what we do without the people fueling the mission. And we need to have quality people that are certified that do that. And so I'm like, here's the difference in saying, hey, give me $60,000 to hire a new person. So let's think about this for a second. If you were to hire this person, how many people could this person theoretically help in a year? And she said about 200. And I'm like, there you go. That's the message in the story that we want to tell is, hey, by helping us reach this $60,000 goal, we'll be able to increase our capacity by 200 more people, ensuring that 200 more people who are suffering from a mental health crisis no longer have to sit on a waiting list or go unserviced. So that's the difference in the messaging. We talked about this a little bit. Impacts and outcomes are super important. This partner did a great job of capturing through our donation form what the impacts are, like highlighting, hey, even $100 gift can provide this outcome of snacks. Hey, $50 can provide a safe night of shelter for a woman experiencing domestic violence. Hey, $25 can provide, or $100 can provide a mental health session for someone, for a PTSD war veteran. So it's important to feature impact amounts on your donation forms and in your messaging to give people a sense of understanding how their gift is going to make a difference. One of the key things that we'll emphasize a little bit more in the recurring giving side of things is that the power of a small gift. There has historically been a perspective in the world of donors that I have to make a big gift in order to make a big difference. And as we know, that reality is just not true. In our world at the food bank, we could turn $1 donated into 10 meals for our community. So it's important to capture these impact amounts, especially lower dollar amounts, so it can let people who don't have the capacity to give, as Brian mentioned, those major gifts, they can still give and feel like they're making a huge difference. So please be sure to incorporate impacts into your messaging. And then have end-to-end perspective messaging in mind. A lot of us think about marketing and messaging just to get the money in the door. And then we just kind of hope that the donor feels excited that they gave and they're riding that high and they don't really need any other touch points from us. But I want to show you the power of one of our partner examples who's done this really well. Licking County Humane Society, um, I made a donation to them, a $10 donation to them more than 2 years ago, and I still get text messages, usually monthly, once or twice a month, with either a video or a picture or something saying, hey, just in, fresh batch of kittens. Thanks to your support, they'll be fully vetted, spayed, neutered, showered with tender loving care until they can find their forever homes. So it's not even a direct call to action. It's just a stewardship thing. But I love seeing how my previous support is still making a difference, even though I know that $10 has spent long and it's been long gone. But stewardship, please don't underestimate the power of sending out powerful, positive, short burst messages about how people's gift has made a difference. I know that's a lot. You guys still with me? Going on to the reach, it's very important to think about who we are trying to talk to. So annual campaigns, the benefit of them is there's really a broad range of audience that you can reach, of people who have larger giving capacities, smaller giving capacities. Everyone should care about core mission, which is really the main thing that you do and that you feature in your annual campaign. And at Harness, we try to provide a couple of resources to help with that. Some donor personas to help you understand that while everyone can be targeted with the ask, please support our annual campaign, they are going to require different messaging because they're going to care about different things. For example, one of our great partners that provides direct medical care to homeless folks on the street instead of asking them to come to a facility is to the average everyday person who might be following them on Facebook. The story that they tell is more about how, hey, even $15 can provide a life-saving vaccine to someone living on the street. Whereas when they go to talk with their local legislators and their mayor and the city council, they'll say, hey, did you know that by supporting our cause, we're actually able to save the taxpayers in this community X amount of dollars each year because of our efforts are keeping the homeless folks out of the hospitals and out of the ER emergency room, like, right, part. So that's the type of thing when we talk about one main campaign, but different audiences and the importance of targeting them and understanding that you're going to have a multi-channel approach to reach people. Use every digital channel that you have available to you, direct mail as well. Phone calls aren't dead. So for those of you who do have bored phone calling blitzes, don't underestimate them. They're not dead. Try to reach, you're going to want to reach these people in every potential audience that you can and channel that you can. And then when it comes to execution, going back to our fun original slide, I know all of you are probably wearing multiple hats and none of you have time for this, but it's important to find folks, whether they are staff, board, volunteers, friends and family, right? Find folks who can have the capacity to actually say, okay, I have the capacity to write this marketing narrative. I have the capacity to whip up a Canva design or a nice little graphic. I have the capacity to send it out to my network and lean on your team. Also, try to identify what can be automated. At Harness, we have automatic emails that go out to folks as soon as a donation happens. We also have automatic text message stewardship that happens as well, which makes the donor feel like you took the time to send a personal message. But definitely, if you have tools and resources to help you get the job done, plus a variety of people to do that, please lean into them. And so I wanted to show you a couple of partner examples of folks that are doing really well. I'll start with this is the one, Brian, that you mentioned that you had referred to us. So Boys and Girls Club, we'll get out of this for a second so you guys can see this. Hopefully this is big enough. So flag me if it's not. But Boys and Girls Club of Greater Cook County, they've had quite a few supporters and some donations. They're well on their way for their annual campaign of reaching their goal, about $57,000 raised. And we worked with them to create a campaign title and a narrative that really captured what donors need to know to give towards an annual campaign. And this is what I'll walk you through today here is what is the problem that your organization is solving? Right. So here they're saying, hey, listen, youth don't have access to structured environments or safe places to go to school or after school. And the problem with that is that means they have lower grades. If they do participate in after school programs, they're 50% less likely to engage in unhealthy behavior. Right. So that's what the problem is. And that's what we're trying to do to solve the problem. So here's what we believe. We believe that every kid, regardless of their background, deserves a safe space, opportunity to reach their fullest potential. It's our honor to come alongside of them. Here's actually what we do. We give them a safe place to learn, play, grow. We have after school programs, summer programs. We help 1,100 kids each year. They're dropping a lot of great programs and facts. So here's what we need you to do. Right? Like this is where we're subtly saying we don't need you to just pat us on the back for all the great work that we're doing. We need you to join us in this. So, hey, we're the only club in our county providing these services, right? And we have big goals to increase our program capacity, our staff capacity, our technology capacity to reach more kids. But the reality is we can't do it on our own. So, hey, did you know that if you make just a $25 donation, it can create pathways for our youth? So this is really significant when we talk about just very simple foundation. You'll notice it's not like 5 pages long. It's very simple. What's the problem? What do we believe about it? What are we doing? How can you help? Right? This is how you can help with a very specific call to action. So they did a great job here. Our other partners, BGC of Kentuckiana, took a similar approach. They're like, hey, listen, we're going to mad dash this thing. We want to get $150,000 in 100 days. So they wanted the bulk of their annual campaign to be fundraised for in this specific window of time. As you can see, they've had a couple of major donors and they're making a lot of progress to their goal. They didn't follow the same exact structure as the other nonprofit, but they basically have the same content. When you invest in us, you're helping develop skills. It's tough out there. Listen, in our county alone, 41% live in poverty. They're falling behind in school. College enrollments are down. Kids need purpose. This is what our most urgent need is, guys. We need transportation. We need mentoring, right? So this is why we need your help. And this because this group has a larger goal to reach and they have kind of a larger capacity donor base, they decided to start from 100 and work their way up to 5 and kind of created this this club-like mentality that matched their club, saying, hey, you're this type of investor, you're this type of creator, you're this type of supporter if you give at these levels. And as you can see, that's turning out really well for them. So I note to say there isn't a one size fits all model for annual campaigning. It's an art and a science, but these are some best practices and partner examples you can use. Yeah, Brian, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I got to chime in a little bit on my friends down in Cook County, Georgia. Um, I think this is relevant to show the opportunity that this simple intentionality delivers. Because 990s are all on the internet, right? If we go back a couple of years, that club's gross contributions revenue was about $185,000. And
Mm,
so that $50,000, $56,000, somewhere in that space that they raised through this annual campaign is more than 25% of what they were raising as
yep,
a total just a couple years before. And so that strategy, that process you walk through, Megan, of taking each step, knowing what you need to do, coming up with the audience and the message, and then just executing delivers results. And $56,000 for a sub $200,000 a year organization is in that range of transformational level of funding.
sure.
So if it were a $4 million budget, it would be a different scenario. So I thought that little bit of context would help
Yeah.
see for folks on the webinar to kind of get this can really move the needle, and it just takes that intentionality to start to get things moving in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that context. Yeah, they've done a fantastic job, and we're super proud of them. They're continuing to push and take the advice that we're giving, and it's working out really well. So they're doing well, and we love to see that. We love to see progress, and that growth, even if it's small, is still growth. And especially since many of you, like I said, are doing a lot with a little, definitely take the win. So those are some good examples, and I want to share. I'm not going to dive into this too deeply today because these are going to be sneak peek resources that you leave with after our call today. But you might be saying, well, Meg, this is great information, but how do I actually take this back to my development team and translate this into something that we can really use? So I've created a custom blueprint. This is what we use with many of our nonprofit clients as well. And I won't walk through every single detail of this today because it is pretty robust and we'll probably be here for another hour. But it is a blueprint that essentially walks through here are 8 sections, and it's built fill in the blank style that you need to think about or do or know about or collaborate on internally before you go to market with your annual campaign. Everything from laying that foundational strategy of how much do we want to raise? Are we going to set a public goal? Are we going to leverage, what's the impact going to be to internally, what's our timeline? When are we going to launch this? How are we going to track and measure success? Do we think this is attainable given all the other stuff we have going on this year? Who's going to take ownership of this? Do we all agree this is a priority for our mission, no matter what, right? Because in nonprofit, we are so used to having new fires be thrown on our plate every day. We're great at firefighting, but hey, are we committed to this no matter what? When it comes to our marketing, do we have quality designs, the channels that we're going to use? We're going to commit to talking about it often. Do we have anything else that might be competing, any other ask that might be competing at the same time? We had a great Boys and Girls Club partner a while ago who they had so many great like micro little fundraisers in their community going on that they launched their annual campaign on Facebook, and they did a great job. The messaging was great, the designs were great and compelling, but when it came to actually like asking for donations, they weren't getting any. Like, we don't understand why. And it was because every single day they had to support this barbecue, buy this $5 fish fry ticket, give to the annual campaign, sign up for this raffle. And it just was getting lost in the sea of all of these other kind of quick action items. So competition is huge. I'll just flag that there. And then, hey, on the content side, going through the what we just talked about with BGC Cook, do we have very clear, like we're capturing this message and communicating it very clearly to our supporters what we need money for, and that we understand there's going to be different channels we're going to use to reach them at different times. And on the stewardship side, what happens after they give? How are we thanking them? Are there automatic emails? Are we handwriting a donor thank you letter? This is just a simple place for you to keep all your deliverables in one place, like all your fundraising links, your assets, your QR codes, that type of thing. And then I can't underestimate this enough or emphasize this enough. When it comes to evaluating, make sure that after you've launched your campaign, so especially for your annual campaign every year, do an evaluation and sit down with yourself and your team and say, like, what actually did we reach our goal? Why are we not? What did we actually do? What worked? What didn't? Right? Oh, well, we actually didn't promote as often as we thought, or we were going to because fires came up. Or, you know what? I really needed to get our marketing team in here more, or our programs team more. They could have helped us push this, or our board could have been more involved. Really helping us get this out. And are we going to do this again for our annual campaign? Yes, you are. You have to do this every year. But let's do a reset. Let's consider a relaunch. So this is a template that you guys have that you can use even after this to do your annual campaign and get started on planning. So as we pivot to the recurring giving, we're going to follow the same format, kind of get started with just some simple basic explanations. I am curious if you guys want to put in the chat, how many of you all have ever launched, even if it failed in your perspective, how many of you have ever launched a recurring giving program? Not just made a one-time ask online, hey, would you consider giving monthly, but actually launched a recurring giving program, like a dedicated program. I would love to hear in the chat. But recurring giving is really just a structured, intentional effort by your nonprofit to encourage donors to give on a regular cadence automatically. The most popular is monthly. Fun fact, the standard monthly gift from individual donors is $24 a month. So it's nothing to shy away from. But sometimes the donations are quarterly or annually. But the ultimate goal of that is to provide convenience to your donors and really for you, sustained, predictable revenue. If any of us are salaried employees, we understand the value of having that consistent paycheck every, 2 weeks, whatever, every month that we can count on, right? So in the same way, your nonprofit, while you're always going to be searching for diverse revenue streams and different audiences you're trying to reach, having that stable base of support that you can count on is incredible. Most of the time, recurring giving goes to your unrestricted annual giving fund, unless you otherwise noted, but that's not very often. So for you, it's super valuable. It gives you a predictable revenue stream. Usually there's a higher donor retention rate. So monthly donors tend to stay 3 to 5 times longer. So going back to one of our original myths, we actually had a donor or a partner tell us this one time. I get this, they told us I have a donor that gives us $100 check every single year at the end of the year. I don't want to risk losing that $100 check. How could I possibly ask them to give monthly instead? And we said, you do know that if you ask that one sweet donor who gives $100 a year just to give $10 a month, not only would you actually get $120 from them year over year, but because you have a proven history that this person gives to you year over year, most donors tend to keep their gift for 3+ years. So that's $120 times three, right? Which is usually on average. Now, granted, anything can happen, but that's the minimum. So it's definitely worth it to consider taking some of those lower dollar donors that you might have. Let's just say like $100. I don't know what counts as low in your organization, but about $100, and try to encourage them to pivot from a $100 one-time ask to a $10 monthly ask. um, it's easier for donors to give small monthly amounts instead of having to worry about big lump sum checks. It makes them feel like they have bigger impact over time. And if you're smart and strategic, which we encourage you to be, about creating a monthly giving club or program or name or society that they can be a part of, they feel like they're part of a community, and not just a random donor here or there. So great folks to target for recurring giving are repeat one-time donors. So if you've ever had someone give you more than one gift, recent first-time donors, and then event attendees and peer-to-peer donors are great to target initially for small recurring giving. Obviously, you want to make targeted promotions throughout the year, but there are great times to ask. Actually, immediately after they make a one-time ask, you might have some technology and your platforms that you use that have this, or you might do this, but immediately after they make a gift, you can have a prompt that says, would you like to consider turning your gift into a monthly gift? We have that as part of our platform as well. The new year is a great time. Say, hey, new year, New Year's resolutions, new way to support us. Give monthly or give recurring. End of fiscal year when you're scrambling, slower periods when you don't have a lot of events or things, and you want to capitalize on giving opportunities, but you don't really have a huge push for anything specific. And then end of year is great to say, hey, don't just make an end of year gift, continue your impact even through the new year. So realigning back to our strategy, marketing, reach, and execution, set your goals. And I have a phrase that we use. It's called start small, tweak it all. Sometimes, at least with the nonprofits that we've talked with, we have a tendency to have analysis paralysis. And we're like, man, well, everything has to be just perfect. No, just start, just get it out there. And then try to decide if you want to evaluate your success based on total dollars raised or total number of monthly donors, or it could be a combination of both. Everybody has a different perspective, but you do want to track your progress towards success on this. And then perks, baby perks. So in the same way that we encourage you to create like an official monthly giving program, like a club name, definitely offer incentives. I will say one of my favorite nonprofits that I support, they're not a hardest partner, but a few years ago, they decided to launch a monthly giving program called Team Freedom. And they said, hey, we are trying to launch this new program. We have 30 days that we want to try to raise our first 50 supporters. And if you give any dollar amount monthly, you will be a part of Team Freedom. And you'll get exclusive behind the scene updates about what's going on at our mission. And I was like, this is awesome. But then they said, hey, if you give it at least $25, in fact, I'm going to grab this real fast off my wall. But they said, hey, if you give at least $25 a month, you will get 3 artisan created drawings. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it says until she is free. Well, you guys might not be able to see this, but who do you want to become an abolitionist? So it was hand drawn art, and you got 3 posters, really good sizes that were done by the artist. And so for me, it was a very easy thing. Hey, cool. I love this cause. I would love to be a part of an inner founding circle club. I love that I can give anything to be a part of the club, but I definitely want that perk of those amazing artisan drawn pictures. So I will give $25 a month, and they've had my donation for 2 years. So leverage perks. I will give this disclaimer because every nonprofit who hears me says, Meg, we don't have the budget to go out and buy merchandise. There are a lot of ways to leverage perks completely independent of you having to spend any out-of-pocket upfront costs. Although I will say people love t-shirts. It's weird, don't know why. But if you put your logo on a t-shirt with a fun inspirational saying, I guarantee you it'll sell. But you can leverage things like, hey, we'll give you behind the scenes scoop about what's going on with our mission. We'll give you monthly text message updates, just like the Licking County Humane Society, who sends me texts of their videos. Not everybody gets that, only their donors do. So there's different things that you can do to leverage perks. And this is a great segue into perks because when it comes to your messaging, I hate to say this because we are all very philanthropic. This is why we're working for nonprofits, but we can't just hope that people will be naturally giving without any type of return in and of it themselves. We are just human beings. We're wired for the kind of risk reward and for benefits. And so these two nonprofits did a really great job of saying, hey, when you join our special club, our Champions Club, our Sustainer Club, these are the perks to you. And here's what you're going to actually do. I don't know if you can see this because it's kind of small. You guys, oh, it's kind of a little small. But basically, they did a great job saying, hey, listen, if you become a supporter of ours at each of these levels, so bronze is 10, silver is 25, here's the benefit to you. You know, bronze level, you're going to get exclusive updates. Silver level, you're going to be invited to our yearly appreciation events, et cetera. But here's what impact you're going to have. When you give $10 a month, you're going to give 2 meals every month to a family affected by HIV/AIDS, or 15 meals. So they did a great job saying, hey, here's the benefit to you, and then here's the benefit to our cause. Here's how you're affecting those positive outcomes. So give it a special club name. Make sure that there are perks for the donor and for your mission. Really emphasize how even a small monthly gift makes a big difference. And then try, if you can, especially utilize a tool, I shameless plug Harness, but utilize a tool that allows for instant gratification through modern day stewardship methods, right? So that's instant text message saying, you know, whether you gave $5 or $5,000, thanks, Susan, for caring about puppies and kittens in our community, right? Thanks, Sam, for becoming a champion of compassion partner. Because of you, we're going to have, you know, the folks that we serve in our community no longer have to worry about a meal on their table. So simple things, but that make a huge difference. With reach, we already talked about this a little bit as far as the ideal audiences. Make sure you're targeting with those specific audiences in mind. You know, thank you for attending our latest event. If you want to continue your great impact and stay in touch, or you know, right, to be up to date about what we're doing, we encourage you to become a monthly donor, that type of thing. And then on the not too much different here on the execute side. Again, please use the team, identify who has the capacity, what can be automated, and just get started. So these are two great partner examples I want to show you. So Lucky Stars, or Lucky Dog Animal Rescue, started a Lucky Stars, I don't know why this is so small, monthly giving club. They're like, hey, your gift provides ongoing support so we can always help animals. So there's no interruption. Here's what you're going to get: a semi-annual newsletter, right? So very low effort and low cost to the org. But if you give at least these amounts, you're going to get these special benefits, right? And did you know that just for $9 a month, I love that they threw this in here. Hey, that's as little as one trip to Chipotle. I don't think they've adjusted this to inflation. I feel like Chipotle was definitely like $15. Maybe it's the extra guac. But you can forever change the life of an animal in need. So, and then we'll ship your magnet to you. So this is a great example of a nonprofit who's doing a great job kind of capturing, here's the benefits, here are the perks if you upgrade your benefit, and here's how it's such a little cost to you. And then our other partner over at Mid-South Food Bank did a great job calling it, I don't know why these are so small every time it adjusts, but become a Circle of Hope member. You're going to make a profound difference. Every dollar translates up into 4 well-balanced meals. Like, that's incredible, right? As someone who cares a lot personally about feeding folks in our community, if I went and bought someone even a fast food meal, right, that's probably $10. But if I can just give $1 to this nonprofit, they can provide 4 well-balanced meal, right? And they did a great job capturing this, like a mother who's skipping dinner to feed her child, an older adult who sacrifices food for medicine. So they did a great job kind of capturing the heart, but the specific impact in a special club member, which is great. So very similarly, in the same way that we provided you guys an annual campaign go-to-market blueprint, we have a monthly campaign go-to-market blueprint. Again, not going to walk through too much of this today because you guys can have it and use it. The only thing that I'll note that's a little bit different than the one before is really perks and incentives. And then I'll skip over to the stewardship side because the important part about monthly giving stewardship, because a lot of folks think, well, they're giving monthly, we already have their gift. What else do I really need to do? But the reality is, these folks have committed their hard earned, especially in this economy, money to you. And so it is important to give them. We recommend at least monthly touch points. That could be a text message if you have that technology capacity, an email update, right? It's just some type of communication that lets them know, shows them an impact story like, hey, because of you, we were able to give this grandma, meals or a great breakfast. Or, hey, because of you, this dog received life-saving treatment, right? Just like how Licking County gave that stewardship message, it's very important to stay in constant communication with those donors because they are, while they may not be a major donor that you might look at and say, wow, that's like somebody worthy of extra recognition. Your monthly partners are folks that don't have to commit their money to you, but they have. They could be giving that money anywhere else. So they do require special stewardship, additional stewardship, and especially if you can automate it, great. But please don't forget stewardship. Same thing, evaluate your monthly giving program before you try it again. And so as we start to wrap up here, I know Brian's going to open up the floor for some questions. Here are some takeaways for you. I know I talked a lot, so I apologize, but feel free to save this presentation in case you'd like to share it with any of your internal stakeholders or your board members. I've linked both of the blueprints I've shared with you here. They are replicable, so feel free to take them, open them, download them, rinse and repeat, and use them to create starter conversations in your team. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. This is what we love doing, is helping nonprofits grow their base of supporters, grow their overall revenue, grow recurring sustainable funding for their orgs. So thank you again, Brian, for the privilege of just giving us the opportunity to share our experience and our knowledge today. And I'm curious if anybody has questions.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So grateful for this perspective that you have shared. And I've got a little bit of a question. So, Giving USA, which many of you are probably familiar with, released a report on different trends in giving of different generations: Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, baby boomers. I realize I got those all out of order. One of the big factors in there is that giving is still very, I use the word reactive to communications from the nonprofit. What types of response uh, does the consistency of communication, even if it's not an appeal, uh, catalyze in recurring and or annual giving, and kind of paint the picture for us of why that consistent storytelling is so important?
Yeah, that's great. I think there definitely are things that appeal to different generations, but overall, anyone who's in marketing or PR will tell you brand recognition is key. We even had a nonprofit tell us, she goes, I send out a letter every single time something happens to the nonprofit, even though it's a lot of snail mail, but I want my brand in front of them every single week if possible. I'm like, that's interesting. So we're top of mind. Brand recognition is huge, right? If you see even marketing on TV, you're like, man, I see that burger. I've got to go get that burger. I've seen it 6 times now, right? So brand recognition is important. I think you hit a good point of the types of consistency in communication. So it is not always a solicitation. Usually in our world, we recommend that when you're talking to audiences, regardless of really who they are, there needs to be three kind of categories of communication at the broadest level. One is awareness, like who you are, what you're doing, what's your program about, what problem you're solving, what the pain point is, maybe something that's a cause awareness month that's top of mind for people, right? Like I mentioned, New Year's resolutions, New Year, whatever. May, mental health month. Hey, how's your mental health this month? Doing a poll, those types of things. So it's more of an awareness piece. The second piece is an actual call to action, like, hey, did you know that when you give $25, even that can help a veteran get PTSD counseling? And then the last is impact updates, which could be told through storytelling, videos. I will say from a content perspective and what engages younger donors, those short, informal, real style videos that are like 2 minutes or less tend to be the most engaging. People tend to look at that and engage with that more than just like even the professional studio type things. So the informal, actually kind of the more informal, the better. So I would say the three different types of content you should always be promoting. We recommend that you talk to people in your audience or in your world at least monthly when it comes to email engagements, quarterly when it comes to print engagements, depending on what the thing is, and then social media every single day. Engaging, that doesn't mean you have to have an ask every single day. But it's important to keep your brand top of mind. It's also important to show them when you do have a call to action that there are options of ways that people can support you. It's not always about just cashing in a check. I know we're here to get the money, but it's volunteering, it's advocating, it's hey, can you like us on Facebook? Can you follow and share this? Can you attend our rally and show up? And right, and the younger generations especially really care about that. And the last thing I'll say is have variety of content when it comes to the generations. Like, so younger folks tend to rally around stories that make them feel like they are included or they're making a difference. Older generations are the one who are scoping you out online, looking at your 990, checking out your Charity Navigator rating, wondering, making sure that you have integrity with where the money's going. So it's important to have both the creds and the heartfelt story. But I don't know if that fully answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Okay.
Any
Yeah.
other questions from folks on the call? All right. Well, Megan, thanks so much
Thank
for.
you.
Oh,
Yeah.
we got one here. I got a hand raised. So you'll have to type it in. We don't have video or audio capacity for attendees on the webinar. You'll have to put the
Yeah.
question in the chat or into the Q&A.
Yeah. I think it's Pepe Vargas. Yeah. Please feel free to let us know. And even if you have ideas, you're like, hey, could this be a good monthly giving title or campaign name? We'd love to hear it.
All right. I've opened up for you to speak. Just figured out how to do that. So, Pepe, if you want to unmute, you can ask your question.
Sorry, the chat was disabled. We were trying to.
Oh, oh no.
You mentioned the resources. Are you going to share? We were interested in the resources for the blueprints. Where would those be dropped or shared?
Yeah. Go, Brian.
Yeah, we're going to email everything out, a deck and everything following the call. And so, Megan, we'll have links to those for everyone and get those in your hands as well as access to the recording of the webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excited for you guys to get started.
Anyone else? Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Megan. Everyone, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
I know when I was working in the trenches with a nonprofit, I called it the merry-go-round, right? Building that annual fund and getting it to recurring. It was very tiresome to get there, but once it was there, man, the stability, the comfort, the ability to focus on programs, cultivating and advancing major gifts, all those other aspects just were so much more efficient because of that stable base of funding. So thanks so much for sharing this
Thank
perspective
you.
and these great resources with folks after the call today.
Thank you. Thank you. Always great to partner with you. And I heard through the grapevine you have a couple of really exciting webinar series coming up as well that I plan to attend. So I'm looking forward to your comms about that soon.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have a 4-part series on board engagement and development coming up in the fall. We'll share a link to register for that in the email as well.
Right. Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for attending. If you have questions, give us a shout.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.